Oh, there you go. Yeah. At least you know my We're good.
Good morning. I would like to call to order a meeting of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents. First, would like to say how pleased we are to be here at UW River Falls. I woke up this morning, I looked out at the sky, and I thought, my God, I'm in Superior. I mean, it's just that lovely. I'd like to begin by calling on Chancellor Don Betz.
Thank you very much, President Bradley, members of the board, President Riley, my fellow chancellors, ladies and gentlemen. Very pleased to echo the welcome you just received from President Bradley here to UW River Falls. And while we'll never claim to be quite as superior, we certainly are pleased to tell you as I am speaking, a bald eagle is circling the pot. So it's just something we do every once in a while when we have guest shows. I'm going to actually begin my remarks by stopping speaking and turning over to our friends a video that we asked this summer for a University of Wisconsin River Falls student to prepare as he knew the Regents were coming. So Ryan Griffin, who's unable to be with us at this time, was able to take some of his skills and apply them and ask some questions to a few of our former students and also to our current students. And just for a couple of minutes, I'd like to turn to that video. So if we could go ahead with that, let's proceed.
Something that really represents the university to me is the new University Center here on campus. It really fosters a sense of community by giving both students and faculty a place to meet. But more than that, it's a self-sustaining building from an environmental standpoint with an emphasis on green energy. So it really parallels the university's goals, not only environmentally, but socially and economically as well.
I got to be a hall manager during my undergraduate studies at the university and run a residence hall on campus, which doesn't happen at most universities. One of the first things we give new students is a keychain to attach their room key and put their ID in. Every time I see one of these keychains, it reminds me of a student I connected with and helps make their first years in college easier. UWRF gave me that opportunity, and I'm glad they did.
One thing that represents the university to me is a globe, and looking at it reminds me of the many study abroad opportunities that are available to students. Through the university, I've been able to go to Belize and Scotland, and I will be traveling to Uganda in the future. These trips make me look at the world a little bit differently, and they help me understand where I fit and where we all fit into a global society. Opportunities like these, as well as classes offered on campus, help show that this is a very important value to the university.
For me, it's a community-built bench that was created as part of a St. Croix Valley-wide public art project. Here at the Phipps Center for the Arts, we've collaborated with the university to present a series of annual events on issues of importance to the residents of the Valley. These efforts directly led to the development of the Bench Project, which is intended to create artful benches throughout the St. Croix River Valley, while also building social capital among an engaged group of community members. A UWRF professor and several of her students worked with Hudson residents to design and build this bench. And I think that that kind of active participation is really an example of the institution's larger, ongoing community focus.
Something for me is like a bucket of paint and paintbrush. I was part of a group of students that traveled down to Mississippi to help out with Hurricane Katrina relief work. We spent a lot of time painting a house that was damaged, helping to make it look normal again. So the paintbrush really brings back that memory. It was amazing. And I think activities like this are one example of how UWF provides the right tools to not only be a good student, but a good citizen too.
One of the first things I think about when I think of the University of Wisconsin River Falls is an open door. As a professor, I'm able to open the door of knowledge to my students. I'm able to show them doors that they may not have known existed. Because I'm able to develop a close relationship with my students, I'm also able to see doors that they show me. And having that open door atmosphere here at the university, having it valued, is a really big asset.
The video you've been watching has special importance to me. Directly after my graduation from UWRF, they asked me to create it. Of all the people they could have chosen, they picked me, a former student. This tells me that not only does the university believe in their students, but they know they'll be successful. Everything people have shared in this video demonstrates that the power of learning is alive on campus. And that's what the University of Wisconsin River Falls is all about.
Thank you very much. I will accept it on behalf of Brian Griffin, and as I said, it was his production from beginning to end. I really appreciated his work. Well, good morning to all of you, and to our friends that are here in the gallery. We're very pleased to have you. I'm also very pleased to welcome our friends Mark Allman from Ron Kine's office and Matt Nicolai from Senator Feingold's office are with us today. Really appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate the work that you've done on our behalf on many occasions. Well, welcome to River Falls and to Wisconsin's western frontier of opportunity. Welcome to the St. Croix Valley and its designated National Scenic Riverway, and welcome to Minnesota, the dynamic growth area impacting and connecting two states. For many of us in this region, you must understand that St. Croix River is no barrier, but rather a bond. The economic and growth prospects for western counties of Pierce, Polk, and St. Croix are bright. St. Croix County is the fastest growing in the state and among the fastest growing in the country. We are part in these three counties of the metropolitan statistical area for Minneapolis and St. Paul. And this past year, when the Twin Cities Business Journal listed their higher education resources, UW River Falls was included along with University of Minnesota Twin Cities, Macalester, University of St. Thomas, among many others. Gathered here today in this building, we are closer to the Minnesota capital in St. Paul than many of the Minneapolis suburbs. And significantly, we are the nearest residential comprehensive university to the metro, with its burgeoning population now estimated to be 3.4 million. The growth projection for the metro is for an additional million in the next 20 years. So here we are at UWRF in a rather unique situation and a unique location, where urban meets rural, where contrasting lifestyles now search for new relationships, and where challenges and opportunities collaboratively tackled here may provide fresh models and alternatives for others. So when you step outside tonight into the beautiful fall evening, I ask you to look west. The illuminated sky immediately verifies that we're on the leading edge of change. Much of this growth is east toward Wisconsin, toward the St. Croix Valley, and toward UW River Falls. And if the real estate axiom about the primacy of location is true, then we truly are geographically blessed. As articulated in our vision, we are committed to be the learning nucleus of the St. Croix Valley. Well, this community that you're in, the community of River Falls, was founded in 1848 by Joe Foster, a Mexican War veteran who was visiting friends in the St. Croix area north of Hudson. He had heard about a beautiful area along the Kinnickinnick River with its cascading falls. And by the winter of 1848-49, we had the first official settlement of River Falls. It was only 25 years later that the state decided to establish its fourth normal school and place it in this community with its falls and by that time its mills. And if you walked into North Hall today, there's an 1893 map, and it depicts River Falls in that year with this notation of two significant features. First, the arrival of the railroad, and secondly, the facade of what is now South Hall, the home of the normal school. The railroad is gone, the normal school evolved into the university where you sit today. One insightful River Falls resident in 1875, just after the school was founded, wrote this: "Generations upon generations yet to tread these fertile plains will reap a rich harvest of work begun here today." I think he knew that the state and the people of River Falls had planted the seeds of learning for the future. He and his fellow settlers expressed their enduring belief in the role of education, and importantly for us today, in the power of learning. 133 years later, the fruit of their pioneering vision is this bountiful region and this university, which grew with and was nurtured by the people and the dreams for this valley. Today, the University of Wisconsin-River Falls encompasses 800 acres of a main campus and 2 farms. We enrolled over 6,400 students this fall, the most in our history, excluding continuing education, outreach, and study abroad programs. We have grown at a controlled pace of over 2% for the past 3 years. As we all know, scarcity of resources in virtually every category, except for commitment, dictates that we proceed prudently at this time. With resources and flexibilities, however, enrollment could significantly increase. We embrace the UW system's growth agenda and the goals of the emerging Advanced Wisconsin Strategic Plan. We believe that both of these initiatives are inextricably interwoven, and both must be credibly resourced as sustained state priorities to be truly successful. UWRF is among the largest economic engines in this region and fuels the growth and development of River Falls, the St. Croix Valley, and the surrounding areas through our annual institutional expenditures, as well as the spending of our faculty, staff, students, and visitors. We host dozens of gatherings of people here from around the region for a variety of purposes, including for the past 17 years, the summer camp of the NFL's Kansas City Chiefs. And when the fall semester at UWRF reconvenes, the community of River Falls dramatically increases in size and prosperity. More importantly, I believe, we are a serious player in the shape of the quality of life of this region and the pool of conscientious leader citizens for the area. And we have 4 colleges and an Office of Graduate Studies and Outreach. They form the academic foundation of our institution, and they include the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environmental Sciences, the College of Arts and Sciences, the College of Business and Economics, and the College of Education and Professional Studies, as well as Graduate and Outreach that I've already mentioned. I really hope that today and tomorrow, via the presentations, the displays, the campus activities that are underway during your visit, and the individual conversations that you will have, that you will discover some of the unique and substantive dimensions of the learning opportunities offered by our faculty and staff in all of these areas. This fall, we enrolled 1,300 new freshmen. That's also a record. And they come from 400 high schools. Our current students represent 71 of the 72 counties in Wisconsin, a dozen U.S. states, and 16 other countries. We retain students from first to second year at a 75% rate with a strategic goal plan of 80%. Now, given the fact that our average ACT is 22, which is about average for the system, and that 57% of our students are the first in their families to attend college, and that our average family annual income is among the lowest in the UW system. An 80% retention rate, we believe, will be a noteworthy and notable achievement. We have designated retention as a priority under our current growth agenda. We have nationally competitive 4- and 6-year graduation rates and the second lowest credit to degree rate in the UW system. Well, for students and families, that's good news. And we were pleased to be among the top-tier Midwest publics in the 2008 U.S. News and World Report survey, and among the best in the Midwest in the Princeton survey, as were several of our fellow UW institutions, which should make all of you, particularly the board, very proud. But far removed from the numbers and subjective rankings, this university, this faculty and staff, and I hope you'll get to know, are really passionate. They're passionate about teaching, about learning and about serving. This place and this region are not boastful or self-promoting by tradition, and yet this institution truly helps people learn, helps students learn, and they know it. Whether it's a new graduate, 10-year alum, or a proud member of the class of 1934, UW River Falls graduates consistently report high satisfaction rates with their years here. With this global century of accelerated change in the knowledge economy, UWRF is reaffirming our historic role as the learning hub of the St. Croix Valley and a committed partner to lend our efforts to building the future of this region and this state. In growing partnership with our fellow institutions at Stout and Eau Claire, with the tech colleges, with the UW colleges, and with Extension, as well as with a wide spectrum of public and private partners, some of whom are here today and others will be here tomorrow morning. And we are stepping up to harness the prowess of what we call the I-94 Collaboration Corridor. We've got great partners to do this with. We believe that we have the opportunity and the duty to make powerful choices, including the power to choose to continue that was begun here a long time ago. So our choice, our pathway for the coming years, is living the promise, the plan for the next dynamic phase of UW River Falls history. The goal of the plan is outlined in broad strokes in the booklet you received in your packets today. Living the Promise is the consensus outcome of dozens of meetings with hundreds of people on and off campus. We began in late 2005 by conducting an historic vision and values survey for the campus that read 10,000 discrete comments from hundreds of individuals who responded. These results helped generate the articulation of the institution's values, a review and affirmation of the existing select mission, and with the addition of an abbreviated focus mission statement and a vision statement for the institution as well. Together with Living the Promise, these constitute UW River Falls mission documents. Living the Promise, then, is our individual and collective pledge of responsibility to our students, to our communities, to Wisconsin, and to one another. And for us, the jewels in that crown, if you're on this campus, are the values of integrity and intentionality. We understand very well that the world around us continues to change, and so does UWRF. In dozens of ways, some written boldly and others almost undetected, UW River Falls is gaining momentum and renewed confidence as it seeks its position in a global knowledge and increasingly interdependent society. As you peruse Living the Promise, you will see that there are 10 goals that mutually reinforce one another in a hierarchy of support and connection. There are 5 development or infrastructure goals that provide a solid foundation for the realization of the 5 operational goals. And we hope that those 5 operational goals will be guiding us for some time. Under the umbrella of the paradigm of continuous improvement and assessment, we look upon these goals as guiding our future. The premier goal we've detected, however, and have decided upon is the goal of the creation of a culture of learning. A culture of learning, for us, invites fresh ideas and opportunities to help students learn. A culture of learning is cultivated in multiple and interconnected ways, such as faculty development, undergraduate research opportunities, civic engagement, global connections, and proliferating expressions of service. And as you will see displayed on several levels of the University Center during the next 2 days, we see these initiatives as constituting part of the effective pedagogy for the 21st century. And for the next several years, we will seek to fulfill our mission to build the future of Wisconsin and this region by educating students to become engaged citizens and leaders who create more sustainable communities, who implicitly understand the importance of inclusiveness to long-term, genuine success, who embrace knowing and serving the community from local to global. At UWRF, students are learning to serve by leading and to lead by serving and sustaining our communities. Civic engagement is a declared value on this campus. A central component of the plan is our commitment to prepare our students for success, for productive and meaningful lives in this the global century. They'll be graduating into an era of unprecedented change affecting them and us. What we must offer them is confidence based in their capacities to learn, to adapt, to learn again as a lifelong habit. Their confidence will be rooted in their competence. We strive to create such a university environment by reaffirming the culture of learning for all of us here. And through the goals and initiatives of Living the Promise, we are trumpeting cut line you've seen a few times already, the power of learning. The power of learning, ladies and gentlemen, is our response to the challenge of accelerated change, a permanent fixture in our future. Learning as a passion, as a lifestyle, assures that we need not fear change. The power of learning can prepare us to lead it, to direct it, and to serve the needs of our families and our communities. In our compressed, globalized world, the power of learning will aid us in devising vital, collaborative solutions to immediate and protracted local and global problems. The planet's fundamental challenges defy narrow solutions and will require imagination and fresh perspective to be tamed, but they will be solved locally. With this confidence in the power of learning, we are pledging ourselves and this university to intentionally grow the next generation of productive, creative, ethical, and engaged citizens and leaders with an informed global perspective. By infusing our curriculum, our activities, and our partnerships with concentrations on sustainable community development, leadership, inclusiveness, and global literacy, we believe that our graduates will be ready to assume the full spectrum of meaningful roles in society. And they will leave River Falls as they have for so many decades, prepared and motivated to lead by serving the needs of others. The venerable Chinese proverb has some relevance. If you're planning for a year, it counseled, you plant rice. And if you're planning for 10 years, you plant trees. But if you're planning for 100 years, you must educate your children. At UW River Falls, we are planning and planting for our future. We cannot and will not look at the world through the next biennium. In this way, we fervently believe that with your partnership, with your counsel, and with your support, we will be able to truly live the promise of our values and our mission and our vision. And in that way, ladies and gentlemen, we intend to build the future. What I can only hope is that you journey home tomorrow, you leave with an enhanced sense of the commitment, the passion, and the sense of service that expresses itself daily in the actions of people around here. Because beyond the inviting campus, this marvelous student-financed university center, the new Dairy Learning Center that many of you saw earlier today, which will be open next week, and other facilities, UW River Falls is an intensely human story about the power of learning to change lives, and dare I say, to change states. We intend to walk the talk worth walking. You will note that the second goal in living the promise is to model sustainability principles. This past year, UW River Falls established the St. Croix Institute for Sustainable Community Development as our response as an institution to Governor Doyle's Energy Independence Directive in the fall of 2006. At that time, four of our institutions, were invited to, quote, go off the grid by 2012. And we were honored to be selected and to field the challenge. For us, ladies and gentlemen, sustainability is a most worthy goal, but it moves beyond conventional notions. We believe there's a broader set of initiatives and expectations that can produce true sustainable community development. And therefore, I'm pleased to introduce this morning's panel. Captained by Dr. Kelly Kane, a 20-year member of the Plant and Earth Sciences Department, UW River Falls, who serves as the director of the Institute. He, along with the members of the panel, will offer a broader perspective on our current and future efforts to build sustainable community development. Welcome to River Falls.
Good morning. It is a genuine pleasure to have you here as our guests and an honor to speak with you this morning. As you can see from the title of my presentation, Sustainable Community Development, Leadership or the Risk of Irrelevance, we are genuinely being very conscious and very deliberate about the language that we are using and the context in which we are using that language. And that's what we'd like to speak to this morning. Invariably, there is always the discussion about what the definition of sustainability is. There are well over 70 published definitions to sustainability, each of them having their very common threads, but also problematic. It's like trying to define freedom, democracy, and capitalism in one sentence. It is very difficult to do. We approach it from this standpoint. And as Chancellor Betz put it, we focus on sustainability from a community-based standpoint. And we see it as engaged leadership in the attempt to avoid unsustainability. With that notion of unsustainability, here's what we are driving at. This is a list of what is considered to be global threats that was produced by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development in the year 2000. This is on their scenarios planning page. This is what they assume to be the realities to which their business models would have to adapt in the 21st century. With that, as you read down through this list, and we won't spend any time on this other than to recognize the myriad of issues that we recognize that face us just from an ecologic standpoint. At the same time, I would argue that there is not a single environmental issue that is obviously not also a social issue, a social justice issue, an economic issue. It is impossible to separate them in that context. With this, you also recognize that even in the year 2000, global climate change was for them considered to be a reality, despite the oftentimes continued discussion that we have about whether or not it's real or whether it's not. There are a number of these elephants in the room, so to speak. Everything from state and national debt, socioeconomic disparity, political and religious polarity. But the two that I want to spend just a few minutes with are climate change and peak oil and peak natural gas. Very commonly, both of these issues are discussed as if they are isolated issues. They are two elephants walking hand in hand. It is impossible from a technical standpoint to think about solutions in one without thinking about solutions in the other, and to find solutions that deal with both simultaneously. Despite the politicalization of the climate change issue by former Vice President Al Gore, it certainly raised that discussion in the general public. And the science continues to emerge that tells us that we are on the data, and the trend analysis tends to indicate that we are on a path that we really do not want to follow. This is the latest data that has come out of the loss of ice in the Arctic Pole. It dropped an unprecedented 20% just in this past year to reach its lowest level since satellite imagery was begun in 1979, as well as in terms of historical records that are there from the maritime historical records. But the one that I would like to speak to a bit more, and it's one that is not generally talked about much in the general public, at least not yet, is peak oil and peak natural gas. Because we think from a sustainable community development standpoint, this is an absolutely critical issue that we need to address. We could spend the entire day talking about the data that there is on peak oil and peak natural gas. This is one of the base case scenarios that has been put forth by ASPO, which is the Association for the Study of Peak Oil. And as you can see from this particular graph, their best case scenario for identifying the point at which we will top the crest in terms of total world production on oil and natural gas, they think is in 2010, 2011. You will find some models that put this crest at as far as 2020. But generally, and there are some scientists who are arguing that we are already at the crest, and it depends on what that crest looks like, whether it's a sharp crest, whether it is a plateau. Is still too early in the game to tell. As many of them indicate, it won't be until we look in the rearview mirror that we truly know that we have passed peak oil in terms of the statistical data that will be available. But as you can imagine, as we top that peak, what happens in terms of petroleum prices as well as natural gas prices. A piece of anecdotal information, and I think it's very valuable to add to the kind of empirical data that is also coming out. This is Matthew Simmons, who's CEO of Simmons & Company, was one of the largest energy investment bankers in the world. He was a primary advisor to Cheney's White House Energy Task Force in 2001, so he is as connected economically and politically as it comes in terms of the energy industry. He is now touring the world giving presentations in a wide variety of high-profile areas. And he's literally calling for a Manhattan Project on a worldwide basis in order to deal what he thinks is a coming economic crisis as a result of the energy crisis. He's actually even now making $5,000 bets that we will be at $200 per barrel on average by 2010. regardless of whether he is right or wrong on that average cost in 2010, the indication is that we are clearly moving into a world in which energy is going to cost us far more than it does now, even though we might think that $80 barrel oil and $3 gallon gasoline is expensive. Under these scenarios, it gets much more expensive. Bringing this closer to home, we have Executive Order 191, which is the Governor's Task Force on Global Warming. Our state is one of the leading states in terms of having that public conversation about what we need to be thinking about in terms of climate change as it impacts our state. This particular task force is to report back to the governor in December of this year. As well, we have the Declaration of Energy Independence on July the 7th of this past year by Governor Doyle. And as you can see from the media, the 2006 Wisconsin Energy Statistics, some of the important data, we could spend hours talking about the data that is in this particular book, but two of the most telling graphs are this one. And these are what we also offer up as evidence for why we are looking at this more from an unsustainability standpoint than a sustainability standpoint. These are two graphs that indicate the total amount of cost based on per fuel as well as industrial sector for 2005. We are now at $18.5 billion of total energy costs to the state on a statewide basis, and we know that at least $12 billion of that is going out of the state. That's cold, hard cash of $12 billion leaving this state on an annual basis. This $18.5 billion is $3 billion more than it was in 2004. So it is clearly a trend that is something to be paid attention to. The $12 billion that is going out of the state is roughly equivalent to $5,500 per Wisconsin household in the state of Wisconsin. So there's all kinds of dark humor that we can potentially throw at these kinds of issues. While this is comical in some ways, we tend and preferentially look at it in this way. The idea that it's very easy to talk about crisis. It is much more difficult, but much more rewarding to talk about it in terms of opportunity. And we think, honestly, that this is, as many entrepreneurs do, the single greatest economic opportunity that we have, that we'll be faced with in the 21st century. So as we said before, when we look at the complexity of sustainability, we clearly go after this, not from, clearly sustainability is part of our lexicon, sustainable development, which is much more familiar to the business community generally than other institutions. We go at this purely from a sustainable community development standpoint because regardless of what global issues that we talk about, unless we solve them at the local level, we will not truly solve those issues. The community is where the rubber meets the road. So we created the St. Croix Institute for Sustainable Community Development as not only as a think tank, but as a do tank, one in which we intend in every way possible to walk the talk. While we still have our inconsistencies as much as any other institution who goes down this road, it is a incremental improvement process as fast as we can make it happen. We recognize that we are defining this in the broadest sense, not just from the ecologic sense, but in a holistic systems thinking approach from an ecologic integrity, social justice, and economic development perspective. And we see it as a service model in terms of being able to integrate our students into every opportunity that we can, both on campus as well as in terms of outreach, and helping to deal with the issues that we see facing us. This is a graphic that, at least at the moment, best represents, as we perceive it, the relationship of sustainability in regards to our culture of learning and the mission of the St. Croix Institute. Recognizing that sustainability cannot be solved unless we have a globally literate population, unless it is inclusive in the sense of bringing to the table not only the most powerful, but also the most marginalized of our social delineations, as well as creating students who, as you look toward the bottom in terms of where this ultimately counts, is from a citizenship perspective. The idea that we are turning out leaders in personal, professional, and civic life that do nothing but reinforce the attempt at sustainable community development. Already within the Institute, we would not be able to do nearly as much as we are able to do without the partners that we have. But to give you some ideas to the projects that we're already involved in, just to highlight a couple of these, especially in terms of Wisconsin Public Power and River Falls Municipal Utilities and Energy Center of Wisconsin, where we already have a comprehensive energy audit underway. We've already done a virtual wind mapping study to see if we have commercially viable wind, which the mapping study indicates that we do. And we're now into the mode of putting up a meter tower in order to validate and corroborate that data. Off campus, we are heavily involved with the City of River Falls and the Environmental Task Force, as well as Leading by Example, which has now been also renamed to Powerful Choices. Also with WPPI and River Falls Municipal Utilities, we've been heavily involved in developing natural step study circles with a variety of communities around the region, as well as with the District Rotary and the Daybreak Hudson Rotary, as well as involved in international programs and consulting. Are two of our primary partners in this regard, and has been for a very long time. One of our strongest historical relationships is with the Fifth Center for the Arts and the St. Croix Valley Community Foundation. We were most recently showcased at the Governor's Task Force on Global Warming on September 20th, in which both our on-campus and our off-campus efforts were showcased for that particular group. Again, our future is totally dependent upon the partners and the collaborations that we have in this region and beyond. As you can see from this graphic, these are all active partners that we have in the wide variety of projects that we are involved in as it relates to sustainable community development. Invariably, we come at this in as much as any diversity of groups can come at a particular issue and get on the same page. These are the principles that we are really focused on in terms of moving us toward a mission of relocalization, a communal sense of place, a globally informed native ecology, energy and resource independence, inclusive social conscience and process, regional economic self-sufficiency, and citizenship for the sake of generations to come. What we would like to close with is to introduce you to a few of the people who have been very much involved in this process up to this point, both students here on campus as well and faculty, as well as those from an off-campus perspective. People who are already living the promise. Oops. I know that some of these students are in the audience and some are not, depending on whether or not they could get out of class. But we're very pleased to have with us this morning a few of the students who have been or are currently engaged in a wide variety of sustainability-based projects. We appreciate them standing to be recognized if they are here, as they are referenced below. Historically, we've had a significant number of our land use planning students providing site plans and design documents for River Falls and surrounding communities and townships. Students in the ESM Site Planning and Development class this semester are working on a comprehensive redesign of the YMCA Camp St. Croix in Hudson, who is moving from an environmental education mission to a sustainable community education mission, and we are helping them to redesign the facility in that regard. Are any of the 411 students here by chance? Thanks. As well, Nick gets to remain standing. Nick was, who is also here who you also hear from this afternoon, was with me for 2 months just recently in China, where he was working on a trail and a septic system design project for the Maizhong ecotourism community for northwestern Yunnan. So we're happy to have him back safely. Andrew Taylor, a Sustainable Community Development Master's student. Is Andrew here? Is working on a trail design between the communities of Spring Valley and Elmwood in cooperation with and financial support from the River Country RC&D. Eric Wickstrom, another of our Sustainable Community Development. Who you also saw featured in the opening film this morning. Eric has a $7,000 grant from the UW System Solid Waste Research Program in developing a composting and a permaculture project for all of the waste food from this particular building. Permaculture being red worms. Stacy Deckers. Stacy is a double major in Health and Human Performance and Marketing and is working with me as well as with Tom Weiss, our Director of Purchasing, and as an intern on developing green purchasing policies and guidelines for the campus. And Ian Johnson, another of our Sustainable Community Development Master's students who was recently named as the first intern for the Powerful Choices program with the River Falls Municipal Utilities. To bring this to a close, we are very pleased to present three final speakers who truly epitomize what it means to be living the promise based on the principles of sustainable community development. I'd like to introduce all three of them to you and then allow them a couple of minutes each to tell you about their efforts in this regard. First is Mayor Don Richards. Mayor Richards is a 1955 graduate of UW River Falls and has spent his life as an English teacher, as well as having taught for 1 year at UW Whitewater. Thank you. But spending a great deal of time in the school district here, and as I understand it, he's still on call. Like so many of our mayors that we work with in the Western Wisconsin Intergovernmental Collaborative and the surrounding communities, Mayor Richards is courageous and unflinching in his pursuit of what he knows to be the vision of the future. He has been one of our most valiant supporters in the Sustainable Community Development Initiative, often facing public criticism for being the target of a cartoon, for his convictions. Our second speaker is Jennifer Borup, who is an associate professor in the social work program here at UW River Falls in her 19th year. Jennifer is in her 8th year as director of the Western Wisconsin Partnership for Child Welfare Training, a federal Title IV grant, and is recognized as one of the most innovative and respected trainers in the field and in providing truly cutting-edge curriculum with her colleagues for our social work students. Third, we are most pleased to introduce Jean-Baptiste Giovamana. Baptiste is a McNair Scholar graduate of UW River Falls with a double major, having graduated with a double major in economics and French. He is now in his second year of his public policy master's at the University of Minnesota Humphrey Institute. Baptiste immigrated to the United States in 1994 during the genocide in his home country of Rwanda. He has served for 5 years in the National Guard and 18 months in Iraq. We are honored to have him working with us on one of the most important projects that the Institute is currently involved in, which he will tell you about.
Thank you, Kelly, for that overly generous introduction. It makes me feel humble, not a feeling I'm well acquainted with. However, I think I have the strength of character to overcome it. UW River Falls' definition of sustainable community development says that leadership is necessary to avoid unsustainability. In that regard, the City of River Falls has recently been designated by Wisconsin Public Power Incorporated as one of 2 cities in the state to be leading by example communities. WPPI is the umbrella power company of which the City of River Falls Municipal Utility is a part. We were so designated because of several factors, one of which was that approximately 5.5% of our ratepayers have elected to buy at least 1 block of renewable energy, thus adding at least $3 to their utility bill each month. Now, some have purchased as many as 5 blocks. In addition, some businesses and University of Wisconsin River Falls have jumped on board too. That exemplary performance has elevated the City of River Falls to 9th place on the national list of top 10 utility green power programs, as judged by percentages of ratepayers willing to become involved. That percentage also puts us on top in the state of Wisconsin, ahead of such giants as Madison Gas and Electric. Evidently, we have citizens who like leading by example. Another way we lead is by striving to be what's called an inclusive community. You may have noticed on the north edge of town that we have a sign which says, "Welcome, we are building an inclusive community." Right above that sign, on the same two posts, is the UW River Falls sign, which welcomes people to its inclusive campus. It should be apparent by the placement of those two signs that we are collaborating in this effort. In order to become officially designated an inclusive community, our city council had to pass a resolution which said we wanted to join the Coalition for Working Toward Becoming an Inclusive Community, which is an arm of the National League of Cities. Once we did that, last February, we were sent the free sign. Which of course was an important point. We do have some, I would call, penny pinchers on the council. There are only two cities in the state so designated, the other being Manitowoc. Because it is unsustainable to be other than inclusive, and therefore welcoming to all, regardless of religion, color, country of origin, or sexual orientation, we gladly aspire to be a sustainable community. Thank you for coming to River Falls, and welcome to our city and university.
Chancellor Betz says I have to talk fast. So I'm going to read this and I'm going to talk fast. Yes. Welcome, and stay awake for a few minutes and we'll be cool. Embracing sustainability as a university means doing so from the perspectives of many different disciplines. It means thinking beyond business and economics and environmental science, and requires finding ways for us to promote and support sustainability as members of different departments in a wide variety of professional disciplines. And we each need opportunities to impact not only our immediate campus community, but also the broader context within which we reside. I've been asked to give you an example of what this could mean using the social work program. Social work shares with many disciplines a particular interest in social justice and equity. The third leg of the sustainable community would be even better if the clicker worked. There we go, a community model that Kelly has described. Environmental protection on the back of the poor isn't compatible with any of our values. Economic development that leaves certain pockets of our communities behind isn't what we're talking about today. In social work, we see the rightness of sustainability not only at the macro level of economic and environmental planning, but right down to the very basis of our communities, the family. All the economic and environmental efforts you can think of would still leave some families at great risk. Using those characteristics that are so critical to sustainable practice, including truly collaborative processes, with shared decision-making, provisions for continual improvement, and orientation to the future, and partnerships across organizations, the social work program at UWRF is now critical to meeting a community need that no single community or government entity could meet. Using a model begun at UW Green Bay that UWRF joined with 24 county agencies, the Wisconsin Division of Children and Family Services, and the federal government to provide all of this in-service training for child protective staff, their supervisors, and directors. Because of state funding changes, by 1991, there were literally no state monies available for training child protective staff. As you can imagine, most of Wisconsin's counties are far too small to be able to develop county-based training programs for their staff. These are staff that do the very complex work with some of our most vulnerable families, families where abuse and neglect have already happened. These are families with high incidences of co-occurring challenges, including drug and alcohol abuse, mental illness, domestic violence, and poverty. And the work is done often by staff with no special educational preparation for the work that they're doing. To find a way to improve the outcomes for children and families, the counties worked with the universities and to develop training partnerships that could join with the state and draw down state and federal Title 40 dollars. These partnerships have been remarkably successful and are unique in the whole country because they are truly partnerships at the ground level of counties and the university. In 1998, I wrote the grant that initially secured funding for the Wisconsin Child Welfare Training Partnership in the western part of the state. We now have an annual budget of just under $1 million, with real dollars that add up to about $470 a year. Last year we trained 961 professionals, including workers or supervisors, agency directors, as well as foster parents. This also includes members of the 5 Native American tribes in western Wisconsin. We filled 1,378 seats in 65 trainings this last year. Our partners in the counties tell us clearly that we have changed practice substantially over the last 18 years. Children are safer, more likely to be with their families, or move to more permanent families quickly. At the most basic level of community sustainability, the family, we have made difference and will continue to do so, hopefully, for years to come. Often one of the largest employers in the county, the partnership agencies are employers for our students and provide internships and would, without a doubt, strongly support UW River Falls as critical to their missions and service. Further, we have demonstrated to our students that incorporating principles of sustainability into the work of our partners and stakeholders creates organizations that are responsive, respectful, proactive, and future-oriented. Thank you very much.
Chancellor, I can't speak too fast. I don't think you're going to hear what I say.
Just like you speak.
Okay. In pursuit of carbon neutral campus, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. I am an alumnus of University of Wisconsin, River Falls, graduated in 2006 with a double major in economics and French. Currently, I am a master's student at the University of Minnesota Humphrey Institute in Public Policy. This summer, I've been working with Dr. Kane on a service learning/internship project to measure carbon footprint of this campus. We have completed approximately 75% of the data collection. The project consists of calculating the comprehensive amount of carbon released into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. This occurs as a result of burning fossil fuels, electrical power purchases, domestic and international travel, and other direct and indirect sources of carbon. This carbon footprint project will further University of Wisconsin's commitment to walking the talk in demonstrating the wise use of energy and material resources. Benefits will include, but are not limited to, helping us identify and manage our sources of carbon production, helping us to maximize energy efficiency and avoid utility costs, saving the University of Wisconsin River Falls and the UW system tens of millions of dollars over the long run. And the project will help us meet our pledge to the American colleges and universities' president's climate commitment. In addition, as we reduce our carbon emissions, we should be able to sell them as carbon credit certificates on the open market. This could become a source of revenue to us by using the power of the marketplace to reduce emissions in a cost-effective and flexible manner. And finally, the project will contribute to numerous spin-off economic benefits related to the pursuit of energy independence in the St. Croix region and across the state. Ladies and gentlemen, this project clearly provides just one example of how important internship and service learning opportunities for students contribute exceptional value to University of Wisconsin River Falls leadership in helping to achieve the sustainable community development goals of the campus, the River Falls community, the St. Croix region, and beyond. Before I finish, I want to thank the Department of Economics here. When I came back from Iraq, they made my transition to go back to school so easy, and thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you all very much. In closing, these are generally the talking points that we use in regards to the St. Croix Institute for Sustainable Community Development and our work both on campus as well as off campus. It obviously ranges from avoiding unsustainability down to guerrilla planning and solutions. In a world where we understand that the hyperdynamic change that we all experience on a daily basis means that we need to be smart, nimble, and quick. Clearly, we don't see leadership as a question of whether we can or whether we can't. It is a matter of there is no other choice. So I think we have a few minutes. If anyone, if you would like to, the panel and I would be more than happy to entertain one or two questions, or we'll certainly be happy to pull to a close. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
President Bradley was kind enough to give us about 60 minutes to make this presentation. I want to thank all the members of the task force and the group that spoke here today. They'll live in the intentionality we're talking about. And President Bradley, I'm very pleased to turn this back to you 56 minutes into the 60.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Betz. I would now like to formally convene the formal part of our meeting and ask the Secretary to call the roll.
Regent Bartell.
Here.
Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Burmaster. Regent Conley-Kiesler. Here. Regent Crane. Regent Keene. Regent Davis. Here. Regent Talbot.
Here.
Regent Loftus. Regent McPike. Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Rosenzweig. Here. Regent Salas.
Here.
Regent Shields.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Spector. Regent Thomas. Here. Regent Walsh. A quorum is present.
Good. Thank you very much. On the agenda now on our biennial budget situation. It's October 4th, and we still don't have a budget. What we do have, however, is overwhelming public support for our budget. I think it's easy to be impressed by the number of people who have written letters in support of our budget, but it's also impressive, I think, to look at the broad base of that support and also to look at the consistency of the message. Members of the conference committee in the legislature that's trying to negotiate a budget have heard from their own colleagues. They've received letters from both Republicans and from Democrats. They've received letters from members of the Assembly and from members of the Senate, particularly in support of our growth agenda. President Riley and also UW-Madison Chancellor John Wiley have recently written letters to the conference committee. Chancellor Wiley said, "The cuts reflected in this version of the budget jeopardize our mission and threaten the quality of teaching, research, and outreach Wisconsin citizens expect from their flagship university." And President Riley wrote, "Even with new money earmarked for the growth agenda, the net effect of the Assembly budget would be fewer class sections, reduced student services, lower quality, and higher tuition. In this scenario, students from every legislative district would be paying more for less." Regents Colleen Thomas and Regent Shields also have been active. They joined with student government leaders from all 26 campuses and also United Council leaders, showing a united front and expressing a shared concern. They wrote, "It's time for lawmakers to recognize that the future of students and the economic vitality of our state depend on a strong and vibrant public university." This past week, I think all of you have received a copy of a letter written by a large group of business leaders, both Republicans and Democrats, to the conference committee, expressing support for our budget, saying that it's important to keep the state's knowledge pipeline intact. Those business leaders wrote, "Conscientious investment in higher education is a solid move toward our goal of creating a vibrant state economy where high-growth businesses and high-wage jobs are abundant." pretty much what we've been saying ever since President Riley started talking about the growth agenda. More than 30,000 alumni from the University of Wisconsin-Madison have contacted their legislators. They've flooded offices with postcards in the Save Bucky campaign. I think you see a sample of that in your materials. UW-Madison professor Louise Robbins also wrote an editorial that was in the Wisconsin State Journal, where she was urging the legislature to protect the money that is needed just to keep doing for students what the campus was doing last year, and also allowing us to grow our economy. If you look at these students from all across the state, the alumni, the business leaders, the faculty, they all vote for Democrats, they vote for Republicans. They don't see our budget, they don't see support for higher education in the state of Wisconsin as a partisan issue. They see it as a state policy issue. And their message on this policy issue is consistent. They're urging the legislature to fund our cost to continue so we can just stay even. They're also asking that we preserve the affordable tuition and the broad access that we have been historically committed to. And finally, to empower us to get going with this growth agenda. And I think the presentation from UW River Falls is just one fine example of how important it's going to be for the future of this state's economy that we get support for doing our part with our growth agenda. That policy argument, the policy message, seems to have very broad support, and it also seems to be very consistent. But what's happening in the legislature now is not so much a policy discussion as it is a political process. And who knows where we will come out in a very difficult political process. It is late for us as a state agency that relies on state support, and of course it's very difficult for all state agencies. But I think as a board, at this time in October, we need to begin to look very seriously at what we do for contingency planning if we don't have a budget. If we're back here next month, meeting next month, and we still don't have a state budget, what are we going to do for going into second semester? What are we going to do looking already in making the plans for next fall? The legislature might support parts of our growth agenda, and yet we could come up short on our cost to continue. Those are going to be some very difficult decisions we're going to have to make as a board in setting priorities in the use of the money that we do get. So I'd like President Riley to comment on his thoughts about how we're going to embark on this contingency planning at a system level and how the campuses and the institutions are going to do it also.
Thank you. Thank you, Regent Bradley. Good morning, everybody. I want to assure the board that the chancellors and I have been talking about contingency planning, and they are all engaged on their campuses in one way or another in doing just that. You saw the results of some of that contingency planning from the Madison campus in the letter that John Wiley distributed. In a few minutes, I'll call on a couple of our other chancellors to talk a little bit about the implications of some of this coming at us very quickly on their campuses. A couple of introductory remarks first. I had the very happy opportunity during the last month between our last meeting and this one to visit a couple campuses. I was at UW Oshkosh with Chancellor Wells and visited with faculty, staff, students there, and his second annual report to the community with a lot of the community supporters, foundation folks, donors there. The end of last week, I was up at UW La Crosse with Chancellor Gao. Similar visit with faculty, staff, and students, and had a chance to talk to his Chancellor's Community Council, a similar group of people who are very, very supportive of the UW La Crosse campus. What I can tell you, and both of those external groups, the group that was at Rick's report to the community and the Chancellor's Community Council at the Cross, both of them had 120, 140 people in the room, and they get it. They get the argument that we've been making. And again, as the President, the board said, these are Democrats and Republicans, many of them pretty hard-headed business people. They get the argument that for the state to be successful, we need more college graduates in Wisconsin, and we need the university to spin off the kind of research that results in 21st century jobs. And they know that to do that, the state needs to make a modest reinvestment in the university. We've had some interesting follow-up to some of those meetings with some of those folks, and some of those folks have had some interesting follow-up conversations with their local elected representatives, which we can tell you about. Chancellor Gallman, I want to talk about that later. I think it's been a good conversation after some of those visits that some of the local business leaders have had with their local elected officials. The governor gets it. The governor was on this campus yesterday afternoon for the Wisconsin Technology Council Forum, and he talked a lot in his remarks about the absolute essential value of the university as a core economic engine for the future of this state. He said the state's most important competitive advantage, going forward is the University of Wisconsin. The media get it. I think you've all seen editorial after editorial after editorial in newspapers all around the state, on television stations, on radio stations, saying we need to reinvest in the University of Wisconsin. Many legislators get it. President Bradley, again, alluded to a number of letters and communications that have been sent among legislators saying we've got to do this if we're going to have the kind of state that we want to have in the future. We've got to use the university in the way the growth agenda would use it on behalf of the state. And lots of our advocates have just been bombarding the conference committee with that message over and over again. President Bradley mentioned the UW-Madison alumni campaign, the Save Bucky campaign, with the more than 30,000 postcards that have gone to legislators. I met yesterday morning with Paula Bonner, the director of the Madison Alumni Association, and she said, having contacted all of the alumni of that biggest institution, she got almost no pushback from anybody about doing this. She just got people who wanted to sign on and send the message on behalf of the Madison campus and the entire institution that we've got to position the university to be able to help the state to prosper in the knowledge economy. A word about the taxes argument. A lot of what we're hearing in some quarters is that we don't want to raise taxes. Nobody wants to raise taxes. But I think the thing we know is that unless we reinvest in the university in a way that allows the university to help drive up the low per capita income in this state, we will have no choice going forward, but either to raise taxes or very seriously diminish the services that the government provides to the citizens of this state and thereby the quality of life of those citizens. We're on a downward spiral track right now. We've got to reinvest in the university and go back up that spiral so that our kids and grandkids have a prosperous future here. If no budget gets passed and we have to operate on last year's budget this year, and then our costs to continue rise at about $150 million a year, we're going to have to make some very draconian cuts this year, because that $150 million in costs to continue that we won't get, or $120 million of it, which is another scenario that we won't get, is going to cause us to make cuts of that magnitude this year. Now, we're a number of months into this year already, and back to the President's request about contingency planning. We and the chancellors have been thinking hard about this. And, you know, the second semester starts in 2 months, right? We're in October, November, December, end of this semester, second semester in 2 months. Campuses will have to take action to curtail what they can offer students in that second semester. One of the things we're struggling with right now is how publicly we say that. How obviously we make the case that this is what we'll have to do. One of the things you don't want to do if you're a good manager in this kind of situation, if you're carrying out your stewardship responsibility is have students walk into a class on January 15th and be told that their instructor's been laid off and the class has been canceled after they've registered for it. So one of the things we struggle with now in this unhappy environment with the budget where it is do we start to talk now about canceling classes? Do we cancel classes now in the second semester? This is not a long-term threat. This is a current pressing threat for us. As I moved around the state, I get asked a lot, well, what are the effects on the university of not having a budget passed? Well, you're going to hear from a couple of our chancellors now about what those effects are coming at us very, very quickly. So with that, I think I'd ask a couple of our chancellors to talk about the planning they've done. Let me start with Chancellor Shepard at Green Bay.
Thank you, President Riley. At UWGB, we start by making sure that our community really understands the nature of the problem, just what it costs to continue. We've run the numbers and shared it with the community because that's not a term in common English. And what it is are the costs at our campus that have already been agreed to and accepted by the legislature over the last 2 years, or the last biennium. For us, it's principally personnel costs, the modest raises that were given during the last quarter of the last year of the biennium, 1/4 of the dollars being available, for which now 12 months of funding is necessary just to continue those. And then bond obligations for projects that were approved, not for the future, but were approved in the last legislative session and now fall due. You cannot not pay people salary increases that are in contracts. You cannot not pay interest to people who've accepted the bonds of the state of Wisconsin. So that means you have to find those dollars somewhere, and that means reducing budgets. Our strategy, already 1/4 into our budget, of which 91% of our expenses are personnel costs, so there's not a whole lot of flexibility. Students have been admitted in good faith. Contracts for faculty have been signed in good faith based on, as we were required to do when there's no formal budget. We're required to budget on the joint finance budget, and that's what we have done. We're a quarter into that year now, and we have started to look at what the Assembly budget will mean if that's what does result for the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. Our strategy is to try to buy our way into the second year of the biennium so we can make cuts in a rational, considered way, minimizing the damage that's available. To do that, we've looked every nickel that isn't nailed down. That's all of our reserves. That's all of our salary savings. That's a hiring freeze. The last pot of money we have of any significance is funding for courses that we would teach spring semester that would be taught by faculty who are not already on 9-month contracts. Those are adjuncts and other uses. That's where we are able to adjust to the demands of students as we watch the enrollments for spring term, and that's the last significant pot of money. We have to make that decision by November 1, whether we fund those courses or not. That's not far away. We're already into October. I'll remind you, that's because students pre-register. What you don't want to do is put students into classes and then cancel those classes out from underneath them. That affects their financial aid eligibility, all sorts of things. So that's what we're looking for as a short term. Longer term, I think that Regent Loftus would not mind my sharing with you. The last budget cuts, one of the positions we eliminated, concentrating on administration, was the internal auditor position, and Regent Loftus questioned that, as she certainly should have. As I explained to him privately, the reason why we eliminated that position was that I could not cut campus security any further or mental health services any further. We had cut them in the previous round, and this was before Virginia Tech, I'll remind you also. So the future is even bleaker in the second year. We'll do what has to be done if it comes to that, but it's going to further harm our university. I can tell you there will be anger in our community if our students we admit in good faith can't get the classes they need to graduate in a timely fashion this coming semester, the next semester. There's already anger because our community has worked very hard on behalf of the growth agenda. And if there's a silver lining, it's this. We have armed the leaders in our community with the facts. And they have been having the legislature come to their offices, their public offices, their corporate offices, and as they report to me, they say, thanks for the facts, because I can really quickly dismiss those who would prefer to deal with this very serious problem at the level of the cliche and the soundbite, because I've got the facts. And then I get confrontational, they tell me. They are really, really upset with what's being done. These are largely people of different political persuasions, largely Republican, hard-headed business folks who understand we are on a path to the bottom among the 50 states. The state is really a spiral down. It's Mississippi, here we come. I've always wanted to use the word the Appalachification of Wisconsin, but those who write my remarks won't let me do that. But that's sort of, they say you won't even be able to pronounce it, Chancellor. But these hard-headed business folks understand that. They also understand, and very much, that the one tool, the best tool Wisconsin has to grow our way towards a brighter future rather than to simply fight the partisan battles of today is the UW system. And they are really continuing to rally behind the UW agenda, cost to continue, and the growth agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Now let me ask Chancellor David Markey from UW-Platteville to address the issue.
Well, you convinced me, Bruce. I needed it, right? Just a few comments about Platteville's situation. Members of the board, this fall we surpassed 7,000 students. We're halfway through our decade-long growth plan, which will take us to a little over 8,000 students. Our planning efforts have identified about $1.5 million, almost $1.5 million GPR dollar shortfall this year, for the same reasons that Chancellor Shepard mentioned, but they're identical. I mean, in terms of personnel issues, their salary issues that have been committed to, their debt service, other kinds of things. Without that positive resolution on the cost to continue, that $1.5 million can only be solved in a couple of ways. And the November 1st is a deadline date for registration for second semester. And we're looking at probably a 10 to 12% reduction in the number of classes second semester. Those will be mostly that taught by the part-time adjunct faculty that are in transition, many of them to full-time positions as we've had a growth model. The other is that we're already looking at 08 fall, because we're 1/3 of the way through the recruitment for the class of 08. Think about that. 1/3 class of 08 is now in place, committed to, admitted. With that number, we will look at a 10% reduction in the freshman class for next fall. We have to. Otherwise, with the growth that we've had, there will not be the resources to put in the classroom. And that'd be unfair, as Bruce said, to the students that are in place. One other additional comment would be in the growth agenda, which is also very important to what we see as our economic development commitment to the state. We have a small piece related to engineering. As you know, we've worked very diligently to work on a statewide model with the colleges and our partners there to offer engineering programs, mechanical, electrical, and maybe some others as we move down the path to expand that. And the next step that we have in the budget is in Washington County, West Bend, which will be the third model in that set, and it would have to naturally stop. But those people in Washington County are committed. They've raised the money for the facilities. They're part of the dollars. We're ready to go. And our engineering faculty are ready to go. But there is no way that we could take that next step in that engineering commitment to the state. So those are examples. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And lastly, let me ask our gracious host chancellor, Don Betz, to talk a little bit about this issue from the perspective of UW River Falls. Don.
These two chancellors, Bruce and David, have been mentors for me since I've arrived here from Oklahoma, and I've always appreciated not only them but the others, what they have to say about perspective. I've never met a group of people who are so passionate about making sure that they create the kind of learning environments we want to have for our students. And I have to tell you, this is really demoralizing. It's demoralizing to individuals who work at this institution and other institutions, but I'll speak of River Falls. I spoke earlier about the passion that they bring to the every day to the job. That wasn't just idle rhetoric. That really is truth. And it has to do with the inherent obligation we have to our students. This seems to me as if Wisconsin is establishing a pattern of operation that is going to place us at serious risk. And that risk is not just going to come in terms of a biennium. I fear it's going to come in a loss of reputation and a loss of respect, a loss of opportunity for those who might have found us the right place to be for the rest of their lives and their families. The programs that these institutions, including River Falls, have hammered out with virtually no resources are some of the best, I think, that exist in the various fields. But you feel a little bit like an orphan. You feel like you have been left out on the street a little bit alone. That's not a dramatic feeling or dramatic sensation. It really is true. Doesn't mean that we're not going to make all the adjustments that were just mentioned, absolutely. Though I have to tell you, we just abhor having to cut classes. We are full to the brim. Students have their programs laid out. They have their graduation times laid out. Some of them have opportunities in the future. And to come in and say, as both have said, 10 to 12% we have to cut for the spring, this puts them and us at serious risk. I don't know what set of factors President Bradley and President Riley is going to take, not just for the state legislature, but for the public and the press, to realize not just the short-term seriousness, but the long-term impact of this way of doing business.
Well, thank you, all three. I've been in this state 11 years now, and I think we're in a different position in this budget year than we have been in previous budget years in my experience, because we've had such an outpouring from every region of the state, from the supporters of all of our institutions, from people who are leaders in their communities, leaders in their regions, leaders in their professions, people who are Republicans and Democrats and independents, saying to the state government, you need to do this. You need to reinvest in the university. So none of this needs to happen. None of this really bad stuff for the future of our kids and grandkids needs to happen if the majority in the legislature and the governor can get together and do the right thing, make the modest reinvestment in the growth agenda we've asked for so we can get started toward that brighter future. I think President Bradley and Vice President Pruitt have a proposal for this board to confirm your strong feeling that that's what needs to happen at this meeting. So I'll turn it back over to President Bradley with that.
Good. Thank you, President Riley, and thank you, Chancellors, for the sobering information. Any comments from members of the board? Any discussion on this? Regent Salas?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think one of the suggestions that I have, if in fact the budget is not passed or further delays, to be included in the contingency plans that you would have to draw up, President Riley, should be how we address the issue of financial aid. And I'm talking in particular about the nearly 5,000 students who are being impacted by the potential of their already qualified status as financial aid recipients by the Wisconsin Higher Educational Aids Board, and see if in fact we're going to lose those students. I know we're concerned about cutting classes as we should be, or laying off faculty, which is just something that I abhor even the thought of. But without the financial aid, these students from low and moderate income families, as I said, up to 5,000 students will lose them. And that, I can't think of anything worse than that. And I think it's important to know that as we think about traditional or non-traditional students, many of them have been caught into situation not because of the same reasons, but primarily for increasing cost of attending college, personal reasons. People drop out, qualified students that we attempted to reach out. Let's not get another group of so-called students that we're going to lose out because of our own doing, and then have to go back and say, how are we going to get these students back? Because they don't have any resources. And I think we've heard from them on that issue. We don't need to hear from them anymore. So let's see what we can do to provide in our contingency planning how we keep those nearly 5,000 students on our campuses, and if in fact this budget is further delayed or not approved by President Biden.
Thank you, Regent Salas, for raising that issue. And as I've talked with the chancellors and the provosts and deans and department chairs, this is one of the issues they're most worried about, because they know that these students are many of them the most likely to have trouble sustaining their educational progress if we don't get a budget, if the financial aid is not in at the levels that we've asked for. And again, the only way we're going to be successful in this state in growing the number of college-educated folks is by getting a wider cut of our students into post-secondary education, because we don't have growing numbers of high school graduates. These are the kids, many of whom were first-generation kids. The state cannot afford to lose. It's about them, but it's about the state and what it needs to do to secure the future for generations to come. So this issue is very high, I assure you, on all the institutions' list.
Regent Smith?
Well, it's clear from you and the chancellors that the failure to act on the budget by November 1st, the impact of that would be catastrophic. I guess what I'd like to maybe get a little feel from is the failure to act by now, October 4th. It seems like there's already been a number of negative impacts on us by not being able to act by now, much less by November 1st, which is rapidly approaching. What are some of the impact of not being the legislature not having a budget by now, meaning October 4th?
Well, I think a few of our chancellors might want to chat a little bit about what's happened on some of their campuses in that regard. Anybody? Jack?
Just to follow up on Regent Salas's comments, we have about over 100 students submitted on a contingency. We said you don't have to pay your tuition yet. You don't have to. We'll figure out a way to get the bookstore giving you the books. We'll figure out a way to get them. We have figured out a way to get their books and so forth. But they're waiting for anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 grants that are held up because there's no budget. So that's a big contingency. We have some that are already submitted and assuming that they were already approved. But because there's no budget, these kids, we had to send them a letter saying, we're not sure about next semester. But the bill that we'll pick up, if we allow them to complete their semester, is just, again, another crippling factor. That's just to be concrete about what Professor Salas is saying. So student aid is very much involved with not having, and with the uncertainty that their parents have. We sent a very careful letter, but we still had about 8 students call and say we got to drop out because we can't worry about this money. We try to cajole them to stay in. But it's the university's at risk because we have basically upfronted or betting on the come, if you will.
Chancellor Keating, thank you very much. That's really, I'm very happy to hear that. And I hope that the other campuses will follow likewise and accommodate. I know that the campuses need the revenues that you're talking about, but there's areas in addition to those that you quoted that could be addressed, including deferring payments on residence halls, room and board, textbooks. I mean, if it's at all possible, maybe these are things that could be included in the contingency plans to see if there's any possibility at all how we can accommodate them and not lose them, as you just noted, Chancellor Keating.
Just going around the table.
Oh, I'm sorry. A comment on
just a little different dimension. And I do want to start to set this point up in terms of how it's affecting things now in the future. But first, complimenting the UW River Falls students for the sensational facility that they've invested in here, investing in for themselves. And the generations of students that follow. Our students deeply get it, and it's very difficult in terms of our sense of not being able to get our own state to follow their lead. We just dedicated a similar facility, University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and our Senator Carol Ressler, a person who is a big supporter, made a point in that dedication that that facility in Oshkosh was paid entirely by student fees. And then I got up and said, yeah, you know, it's about time for the state to step up with the facilities that are important for the academic programs, because in our comprehensive campuses, and River Falls is in the same situation Oshkosh is, we haven't had new freestanding academic buildings since 1971, and all this growth is going on. So that's another dimension of this, and the budget not getting settled, is what's going to happen to the capital projects that are just going to be dead in the water. And how that impacts things right now is we're out having to raise money. And that has been going very well until recently, in the last couple of weeks. The donors I've been talking to and said, what's going to happen if there's not a state budget? What's going to happen to that building we're willing to help support? So that's another consequence.
Regent Pruitt?
I wanted just to add my appreciation to the chancellors for sharing their thoughts, but I wanted to follow up with just a question, because clearly it would appear it's going to be very difficult to cut our way to this through this problem. And I guess the question on the contingency plan is what kind of tuition surcharge might we need to consider as a board for the second semester on some of your campuses. And if we were to do that, obviously I'd be interested in any thoughts you might have as to what effect that would have on students and their families. Have you done any analysis, Chancellor?
I can give you a back of the envelope calculation. And if you look at all those pots of money I was talking about just to get through this year, we have to address about a $1.4 million problem under the assembly budget. And with all those pots of money add up to $900,000. That means no extra sections, normal section schedule spring term, no hires, so on, all salary savings recouped. That leaves us with over a $500,000 problem. That means that would be a surcharge for our students on a per head basis, or per FTE basis, about $125 per student for one semester to pay more to get less.
And what if you were paying more to get what you currently have?
And if we were to simply recover the costs to continue, it would be 3 times that for one semester.
For one semester. Regent Crane?
This may be jumping the gun, but I'm anxious to hear what we're going to say as a body about this. It seems to me that most of us numerous people have been mentioned, and bodies have been making individual statements, making individual comments, trying to make the kinds of connections that we've tried to do, but it does seem as it's time for us to say something strongly as a body, and I'm hoping you have something in mind.
I think that Regent Connolly Kiesler had an idea for a resolution for us to consider.
Do people have this in front of them?
No.
Well, okay.
But do you have copies for people?
I've gotten a copy of it, but I think we should probably hand that out. I think we should stop calling it a surcharge and start calling it a tax. You know, they don't want to tax anybody, but that's exactly 160,000 students are going to be taxed if this happens. It's a tax. They're just taxing selective people.
Regent Rosenzweig?
Yeah, while you're thinking about this, there's a difference in the debate whether you assume an adoption of a budget predicated on the assembly or you assume that there is no budget. And I think it would be important to perhaps at this point assume a no budget, because I think that that's really where the debate, as I hear it from legislators, is taking place now. That there is this very chilling belief that there will be no budget. And I think it's important that the public know the consequences of that eventuality. Because oftentimes people make kind of offhand remarks. It doesn't matter. You know, budgets are just budgets. But people don't really focus on the consequences of the passage of it. It's not just a formality.
And I think the comments made by the chancellors have been responding to what if there's no budget.
Is it good? I heard you say. I think Chancellor Shepard was giving it the benefit of a doubt and saying the assembly budget.
Regent Falbo?
I think there's another follow-up piece that maybe hasn't been mentioned yet, and that is we have donors who are in the some stage of a commitment and have given dollars at some level, at some great levels, for capital projects. We might have to return money. And that's the short-term loss. The long-term loss is try and get that money again from that donor community.
Right. Won't happen.
Another comment I want to make, and I'm going to ask this outside of the meeting of President Riley and Chancellor Shepard, is what is a Republican hard-headed business folk? But I'll find out.
They must, who knows who they're talking about?
I am not sure.
I just wanted to know if that was you.
That's what I want. But hard-headed. One more comment, and that is that I don't think one politician on any side of the aisle ever got a vote to go to Madison to not do their job. And that's what we have here. We have people not doing their job. And I don't know the proper message or the proper way to get it across, but I, not as a regent, not as a hard-headed Republican business folk, every future election that I'm going to go into that box in, I am going to ask the people that I'm thinking about voting for, are you going to do your job or are you not going to do your job? And when you don't, I'm going to be at your doorstep, reminding you that you're here not doing your job and we didn't vote for them.
Regent Pruitt?
No, it's just to reiterate, and probably say it not as well as either Regent Rosenzweig or Fabio have said it. I mean, I think it is very important. Budgets are about choices. And I think one of the things that this resolution that Regent Conley-Kiesler is offering is that it's critically important to make clear that inaction is a choice. And by not acting, there are very serious and dire consequences. And I think that's sort of along the same lines as you're making. And to suggest that by not acting, that nothing is happening is pretty inexcusable.
Regent Davis?
I don't know that anything we say these days seems to make a difference, but I think I want to weigh in anyway. And I find what the chancellors have said to be awfully moving and persuasive, but I am particularly moved, if you will, by Chancellor Betz's comments relative to the long-term consequences of what I view as not only short-sightedness, but some, pretty sophomoric behavior on the part of members of our legislature, both on the inaction or the action side. And the reason that I want to comment on that is because the consequences of sending messages that are unintended to not only the parents of students today, but the students themselves and those who have supported the university system and some who have late-breakingly reveled in the opportunity to support the university system by virtue of the support for the growth agenda are pretty dire. I just think that shame, shame, shame on those who would ignore the letters, the editorials, the pleas on the part of students, the neighbors for whom they are ignoring in terms of the consequences and what have you in this behavior. I'm hoping that somehow or another, regardless of what the other issues are that are impeding action on this budget, that somehow or another there's going to be some breakthrough that says, you know what, shame on us and we must act in the best interest of the state. Because this is not something that has a today only. There is a future that may be impacted negatively beyond what we even may imagine right now by virtue of the kind of inaction that's going on in the legislature. So I don't know what else we can say. I'm not sure that this resolution says it's strong enough, whatever the it is that needs to be said. But I think there are some very concrete consequences today and more importantly in the future that just would like to think will break the logjam. That's it.
Regent Thomas?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your concern and support. I'd just like to weigh in with the student perspective and reiterate how critical the maintaining quality is for our educations, for the value of our degrees after we graduate. And also, as I've talked with students about the budget over the past several months, those of us who know some about it and who have followed it understand the severity of the situation. I think students are becoming more and more aware every day But I think it's really time to start engaging in conversations about practical things that will happen on campus if we don't have a budget. Because when you start talking about not being able to get the classes that I need to graduate or whoever needs to graduate, students will start to act. Because that's really concerning. And if we can articulate other ways students will feel the pressure from the budget, either in this, I like that, the tax, student tax.
Call it what it is.
Right. Or in class sections cutting and professors who will end up going somewhere else because they're not being treated legitimately here. That will help a lot, I think. So, thank you.
Thank you. Regent Payne?
I have a question that perhaps is a naive question, and I have been trying to follow this as everyone has, is what's been happening or not happening in Madison. But apparently there's no legal remedy to forcing decisions. It's just very perplexing to me that there's not some process in which there needs to some kind of a decision is required. I'm assuming that one of the reasons it hasn't happened is that the positions are, and this is what anyone would know, is that the positions are so polarized that there is no accommodation to coming to any common positions or even majority opinions that are that will win the day. But I just don't understand how this can be, that something doesn't have to happen.
Well, Regent Pruitt has a PhD in political science. He probably just knows all this stuff.
I'm waiting to hear from you.
You'll wait a long time. You're waiting a long time.
Ambassador left.
Yes, well, the ambassador is not here. Any other?
No one's going to tell me.
I don't know that anybody knows. Regent Walsh?
I'm not really going to answer your question, but there is no answer because this is one of the few states that can go without a budget because we just are stuck with spending what we spent before. There are other states where they cut down all spending. You know, just a thought. We've done, and this is, I want to compliment the staff and the leadership of Kevin Riley and Mark for getting the message out, and we really have. It's been evidenced by editorials, by business people who have signed petitions, the students, and the message really is that we are part of the solution to what is causing the polarization. Now, the polarization is very simple to understand. There's one group that doesn't want to increase the revenue side, and that is oil tax, the hospital tax, the tobacco tax, and the income tax, although it's just the first three that are an issue here because nobody's proposing the income. And there's another side that says we need to spend this money. Well, we're in the spending column, but that's the unfortunate message. In the old days, we'd say the university was part of the spending. Well, in fact, we're part of the investment column. We're part of the investment in people that will increase the revenue through no increase in taxes, but an increase in GNP and income. And that is the message we've gotten across. And that's the message of the growth agenda. That's the message that the legislators are listening to, the businessmen are talking about, business people are talking about. And that's why we're, I think, going to be successful in this. We still remain the top priority, along with K-12, for Governor Doyle. The Assembly people understand that. So the compromise will be on the revenue side and who gets cut in spending. I'm still very optimistic. As early as this morning, they're still talking about those priorities. But we've done a wonderful job of sending the message that isn't about spending. It's about investing in the people of this state and investing in our future and what UW River Falls is all about and everything else. And I really think no matter what happens in this budget crisis, that we will come out of it with a message that we can move forward and have momentum on because of the great leadership, not only at the system, but on each of the campuses. So I congratulate you.
Thank you. Regent Connolly Kiesler, would you like to introduce a motion?
She has her hand up. Do you care?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, because it was on the motion.
Well, could we get it,
Oh, you want
could we get it on the floor if you would?
I'm going to move the motion. Do you want me to read it all, or just
I don't think
move the motion?
everybody has a copy,
Everybody has a
correct?
copy? All right. There isn't a number on this, so
It's the Connolly-Keesler.
it's a Connolly-Keesler motion of resolution.
Is there a second motion?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Regent Rosenzweig?
Yes, thank you. And I just want to compliment Regent Conley-Keesler for taking the initiative on this. I mean, that's really important. And I hope, I didn't know whether Regent Welsh was suggesting that we not do a resolution, but I think I would really, because I think that we have gotten the message. And I was just contemplating the points that the chancellors made as they were speaking to us today. We didn't have their information when you drafted this. And I wondered whether it wasn't important to incorporate some of those very important points that, frankly, I didn't think about. For instance, I didn't think about our bond obligations. I didn't think about our contractual obligations. I should have. You know, I'm thinking about the class cutting, and I'm thinking about the tuition, but there are consequences that I don't think are readily apparent to people. I don't have a PhD in political science, Representative Pruitt. But I mean, I should have, but I didn't. So I wonder whether that we could have a you know, perhaps a time to think about incorporating some of those very important points that the Chancellor made, and whether you'd be open to that.
Could we work on this later today, and then bring it in tomorrow?
Sure. If that would be your pleasure. Regent Falbo?
I reluctantly agree. I think the points that have been made here versus the points that are in the resolution are much more on point. And not that this is bad. This certainly is all true, but I think we need to hit the actual points of the actual effect to our system, not a national average, not a comparison to the state of Minnesota, but the things that have been said today. And then our conclusion of what we need to do about it.
Well, you know, it's just when you were speaking, Regent Rosenzweig was talking about maybe putting some other points in there. I think when you think of today, and then you also think of what we need to do tomorrow, I think it would be in our best interest to try to act on this today and not work on it during the day and take it up tomorrow.
I agree, because we need to get this into the press today.
It might be good, Regent Conley-Keesler, if you did read it, because we have people online and some people in the audience who don't have a copy, just so everybody knows what is in there now.
Can we make changes as we go if somebody wants to add something? Okay, so anybody wants to jump in, feel free as we kind of go through this. Whereas the cost of operating 2 doctoral universities, 11 comprehensive universities, 13 freshman sophomore UW colleges, and 72 county extension offices has already increased due to normal inflationary factors, and the absence of the 2007-09 operating budget leaves the University of Wisconsin system without adequate resources to cover higher operating expenses. And whereas the UW system operates and maintains more than 60 million square feet of facilities, and the absence of the 2007 capital budget leaves the state public university without necessary funds for major maintenance projects, whereas continuing to cut the UW by refusing to fund annual inflationary costs will only accelerate Wisconsin slipping further behind states like Minnesota, which now has advanced 7 points ahead of Wisconsin in the percentage of state residents with baccalaureate degrees and $4,000 ahead in per capita income. And whereas per student state support in Wisconsin has already
is already $1,200 below the national average for four-year universities. It almost warrants being said again, $1,200 per the national average for four-year universities. The Board of Regents is committed to slipping no further behind peer states in terms of educational quality and affordable access. And whereas the shortfall in the state funding created by an ongoing appropriation in 2007-08 is now equivalent to the amount of state support for 67 full-time equivalent undergraduate students, and whereas 6,700 full-time equivalent undergraduate students, and whereas the shortfall in state funding created by an ongoing appropriation in the 2007-08 would force the Board of Regents to choose from among a set of unacceptable alternatives, shrinking enrollments, reduced class selection, and thereby extending time to degree, and a tuition surcharge tax, on top of a 5.5% tuition increase already approved for the academic year. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents, echoing calls from students, alumni, business leaders, legislators, UW faculty and staff, and statewide media outlets, calls on the state to fund the UW system's normal inflationary cost and a modest increase in the growth agenda for Wisconsin, which will increase seats on the UW campuses for Wisconsin students and ramp up research and development efforts to create and support knowledgeable economy for our children and grandchildren.
Regent Davis.
I have a suggested one. Okay. I don't know if it replaces or adds, maybe adds, but it's something like, whereas failure to act by November 1 will likely result in spring semester class reductions of 10 to 12% on most campuses.
Is that accurate, that 10 to 12% number that?
Approximately 10%.
I'm just asking the other campuses.
Yeah, right.
And Chancellor seemed to be saying yes, that would be a good number. So, Regent Davis, you're suggesting that as an amendment?
Yes.
Are you putting in just approximately 10%?
That's fine.
Okay.
But the point is November 1 and spring semester class reductions on most campuses. That's kind of what I thought.
Where are you going to take that to?
Well, either before or after the shortfall, whereas.
Probably before.
Yeah, I think, if accepted by the August body.
Or can we add it in that shortfall one?
I would rather
Shrinking
not,
enrollment.
only because I think it is a punchy point that needs to be clearly understood, I'm thinking.
Punchy.
Well, so maybe we don't have to do this real formally. It'll take a lot longer. You've made a suggestion, at least so far, you accept that.
Yes.
Regent Crane?
I just want to suggest, and I know this isn't the usual way that would do a resolution, but I'd put those punchy points right up in the front and then put these other stuff afterwards. I think the last whereas and then the addition that Danae has talked about, that's the first thing we want people to see. I know that's not the usual parliamentary way of doing, but...
Well, we're just trying to have a group discussion for now. So that's a point. Regent Smith?
Let me just offer this, as well as adding these points, that whatever we come out with, I assume there's going to be a release along with that. In that release, we could incorporate some of the comments, I think, from the chancellors on specifics. Not to say we shouldn't try it in the resolution, but I think if we do something along with this, we're going to have a chance for somebody to quote Bruce Shepard or somebody to quote Don Betz in giving specific examples. So just a comment.
That might be a good idea. Regent Falbo?
I think we're on the wrong track, trying to create a resolution by committee. And I'm sorry, I don't know what the timing is, but I think it needs more thought. And it needs more facts. And I don't think we're going to get that right here, right now. It's the old adage that our charge as a committee is to create a horse, and we're going to end up with a camel.
Well, a resolution might be better than no resolution today.
Well, and maybe the point Brent made is fair. Like maybe we attach a letter that bullets some of these pieces with this resolution for the media to take and be able to ask the chancellors then and not change the resolution.
I agree with Danae's amendment. I think there are plenty of facts here. I think I definitely would support action today on this. I think the state, we really need to start getting moving right now on this budget. I've been getting complaints from students about the WEG, parents. It's everywhere. This is absolutely amazing. I'm kind of concerned myself on whether or not I'm going to be able to graduate next May, with everything that I want to graduate with. So I definitely think we need to act
today. Regent Bartel.
Can I just suggest as a means going forward that we adopt this resolution with and appoint a small group, maybe with Regent Conley-Kiesler and a couple of others, to gather some of the points that were made and as the rationale for this resolution. We don't have to have everything in the whereas clauses, and it can go with it. It's the rationale for adopting this resolution. And then we can move forward, and we can do that this afternoon. We can do that right away.
Well, we can have the chancellors just start bullet.
Chancellors can start bullet pointing it, and we can put it with this resolution, because the resolution does say what we want it to say. It doesn't say it as strongly as perhaps some of us would like to say it. Perhaps that strongly might not be the right thing to do, but the points that were made this morning, I think, were very persuasive. I think they should be communicated. We can do that.
So the suggestion is that we would adopt the resolution and that we would work on these ancillary points in the communication that goes along with it. Regent Salas?
And I'm glad that, thank you, President Bradley, but I'm glad that we're moving forward to resolve the issue of issuing a resolution today. And I just wanted to suggest, Regent Conley-Kiesler, in the next to the last paragraph, when we're talking about shrinking enrollments, reducing class sections, spending time to degree whether we should include the impact of the tuition increase is really the impact. Our concern is on low and moderate income families. So a suggestion would be that we include further burdening students from low and moderate income families right after the tuition increase bullet that you have, just for your consideration.
So where would you?
So
So we're going to do shrinking enrollments, reducing class.
Yeah, keep that as it is, and up to the shrinking enrollment, reducing class sections, thereby extending time to degree, and a tuitions surcharge on top of the 5.5% tuition increase, which will further burdening students from low and moderate income families.
Regent Salas, would you like that in the resolution, or could that be one
Well,
of
for
these?
your consideration, I don't know if it can be adopted or one.
Do we have a motion on the main amendment?
Yes.
I move to amend it with just those words.
Okay, is there a second to Regent Walsh's motion?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion?
Would you read them again, please?
Right now I have where it says tuition surcharge on top of the 5.5% tuition increase further burdens low and
Students from low and moderate income families.
Further burdens students from low and moderate income families.
Yes.
I'd say further burdening.
Further burdens.
Burdening.
Well, it has to be ing according to my English. It says that we've said shrinking.
I'm moving on.
That's a name for that activity.
So any other discussion on Regent Walsh's motion that the resolution be amended? Regent Rosenzweig?
I really believe that a tuition tax is the proper way to go, because surcharge sounds relatively benign and tax really is what it is. It is what it is. The consequences of not passing a budget are a tax on our students.
Okay, Regent Salas, would you agree to that language as part of your proposed amendment?
Yes, President Duffy, thank you.
I like that.
Okay.
Well, can I
So-
ask a question, clarifying question?
Yes.
So the amendment that I suggested, that's not going to be an amendment, it'll be in the ancillary document that lists.
Correct.
Because it's important to me that we indicate what happens by November 1.
Yes.
So if that's going to be in something that transmits, I'm okay if it's not in the resolution.
Okay, all in favor of Regent Welch's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so the resolution, we have a motion on the floor to adopt the resolution as amended. Any other discussion on that motion?
So that's just understood there's going to be an ancillary document going along with that with some bullet points.
Correct.
We have a comment from Carol.
Yes, Brian?
Question, if we use the word tax, is that appropriate because the board is not taxing the board? That might be an issue we just want to consider.
Good
point.
Well, we don't have taxing authority, that's for sure.
Somebody. Could we put it in quotation marks?
We do have surcharges.
We don't actually. Put it in quotation marks.
Yeah,
We don't have surcharges.
Rick has
We don't have
Surcharge /
Yep. That'll take care of it.
You can do quotes.
We can do quotes.
We have that.
We have the authority to use quotation marks. All in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Good. The resolution is adopted as amended. Thank you very much, Regent Connolly-Kiesler. That concludes our discussion on the biennial budget update and our resolution. The next item on the agenda is discussion of the UW system Liberal Education in America's Promise, the LEAP program that all of us have heard about before, and we will have remarks by a few people, first one being Senior Vice President Rebecca Martin. Rebecca.
I want to thank you first for concluding your discussion on this very important topic. I was afraid that this presentation, which we see as the core of academic issues that we're dealing with, was going to be a casualty, yet another casualty in the long line of things that are creating problems for us in this budget. But hopefully we will be able to engage you in this discussion for a while at this point. Liberal Education and America's Promise, or LEAP, is a 10-year campaign launched by the American Association of Colleges and Universities that started in 2005. This is a leading national organization. All of our institutions are a part of it, and we're very pleased to be the partner as the UW system in their national partner in this program. The mission of the LEAP campaign is to make visible and understood the value of a liberal education for individual students and for a nation dependent on economic creativity and democratic vitality. The campaign seeks to expand public and student understanding of the kinds of learning that will truly enable our students to succeed and make a difference in the 21st century, facing the challenging problems we know about today and facing those that we can't even imagine 20 years out when our graduates will be the leaders of our communities. So let me see if I can, there we go. So what do we mean by liberal education? Liberal education is a philosophy of education that empowers individuals with broad knowledge and transferable skills and a strong sense of values, ethics, and civic engagement. These broad goals have been enduring even as the courses and requirements that comprise a liberal education have changed over the years. We've been seeing liberal education as a very important value in this country for many, many years. Liberal education is characterized by challenging encounters with important and relevant issues today and throughout history. A liberal education prepares graduates both for socially valued work and for civic leadership in their society. It usually includes a general education curriculum that provides broad exposure to multiple disciplines and perspectives and ways of knowing, along with in-depth study in at least one field or area of concentration. By its nature, liberal education is global and pluralistic. It embraces diversity of ideas and experiences that characterize the social, natural and intellectual world. Well, let's see. So why now? How urgent is this work? How topical? Let me give you just one example. And Rebecca Teroff, who is passionate about this work, has been doing this for a number of years, gave me a whole stack of quotes to share with you. This one really was very compelling to me. It was from the Wall Street Journal editorial in August, and it was pressing higher education educators and leaders to look beyond the ultimately narrow focus of the science and technology, engineering, and math fields that we are all very concerned about now, to include reasoning, creativity, and knowledge across dozens of subjects as essential components of a 21st century education. The point is that certain majors are not, it's not that certain majors are better than others, but rather that the very skills, ability, and habits of mind instilled in students through a liberal education, a more holistic form of education, are those that are most needed in the 20th century global society. The business community has been saying this with a pretty uniform voice. AAC&U, as part of this project, conducted a national study of employers late in 2006, and here is what they said. Fully 76% of employers surveyed would recommend what amounts to a liberal education for young people that they know. So while we all agree that we need to work diligently towards improving access and affordability, retention, and graduation, we also need to be concerned with the what of college as well as with the how. Here are the essential learning outcomes that have been established as part of this project. Knowledge of human cultures and the physical and natural world through the study of sciences and mathematics, social sciences, humanities, history, languages, and arts. Intellectual and practical skills, including inquiry and analysis, creative and critical thinking, written and oral communication, quantitative literacy, information literacy, teamwork and problem solving, personal and social responsibility, including civic knowledge and engagement, both local and global, intercultural knowledge and competence, ethical reasoning and action, and the foundations and skills for lifelong learning, and integrative thinking, which includes synthesis and advanced accomplishment across general and specialized studies. The LEAP campaign in Wisconsin is working to address this very question through a variety of coordinated strategies focused on campus action, leadership, and public and outreach and advocacy. The campus action strategies will be detailed for you in a minute by the two people I will introduce to you. Leadership in LEAP is being exercised by a number of different groups. President Riley and President Bradley have spoken to audiences nationally and throughout the region about this. Lieutenant Governor Barbara Lawton, a lifelong champion of liberal education, is a member of the AAC&U National Leadership Council for LEAP, and she and President Riley are working right now on a proposal for a wing spread conference focused on building leadership and advocacy for LEAP throughout Wisconsin. Public advocacy and outreach is happening in community campus dialogues based across our state through multiple outreach programs to Wisconsin citizens originating from almost every one of our UW system institutions. We are also working very closely with DPI and public schools and business executives and government officials to bring value to the high school diploma by raising the regular high school standards and aligning those with these very topics, both in the Partnership for 21st Century Skills and the America Diploma Project. So I would now like to introduce to you Provost Lane Ernst from UW Oshkosh to talk about one campus example, and then Dean John Christian from the College of Arts and Sciences at UW Eau Claire, who is chair of the Systems Advisory Group on the Liberal Arts, to talk to you about what we're doing across our campuses. So I'll turn it over now to Lane.
Thank you, Rebecca. It's good to be back in River Falls. I've only been here once before, and that time I was asked to leave the golf course because of slow play. I'll try to pick up the pace. I was playing quickly, but the woods were thick. But Okay, let's see if I can. Thank you. Okay, here we go. In response to Chancellor Wells's October 2000 call to develop a strategic planning process at UW-Oshkosh, the campus has formulated a set of governing ideas, strategic action initiatives, and key operational plans. Growing out of this process, the university actively came to support components of the AAC&U's Liberal Education Initiative at multiple levels on campus, even before there was an official LEAP program. At the college level, our former Letters and Science Dean, Dr. Michael Zimmerman, who has been a long-time advocate of the liberal arts, became a leading figure in the creation and development of SAGLA, which Dean Christensen will speak to next. Dr. John Coker, our current LNS Dean, is also an active member of SAGLA and tri-captain of our campus's liberal education reform team. In my opening day remarks of September 2004, I included the following on the importance of liberal education. Building upon a planning process initiated by Chancellor Wells and participated in by faculty, students, staff, and community leaders, we have developed a unified focus that supports traditional scholarship and values of a liberal education while expanding the university's engagement with the people of the Fox Valley in northeastern Wisconsin through a variety of collaborative programs, articulation agreements, and individual and group initiatives. We have strengthened the university at the edges while remaining true to our core values of teaching students to think critically and become socially responsible citizens of the world. And then in November 2004, I think most of you remember, or some of the regents who were here at the time will remember, that Carol Geary Snyder of AAC&U came to speak to the board. In January 2005, AAC&U officially unveiled the LEAP program, and then in March of the same year, the UW system became a pilot collaborator in the project. There we go. In spring 2006, the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh magazine published the first of 3 special issues on liberal education and America's Promise. This is the picture of the first issue. In the first issue, we focused on the accomplishments of the faculty, staff, and students of letters and science. Chancellor Wells noted in this issue that UW-Oshkosh is on the forefront within the UW system for having developed exemplary programs that embrace the philosophy of liberal education. He also spoke of the priceless return on investment provided by a liberating education. The second issue, which appeared in fall 2006, focused on the value of a liberal education within the professional studies programs. Sometimes the professional studies programs don't believe they belong, but we showed how indeed they did. Finally, in spring 2007, we concluded the series on LEAP with a discussion of connecting liberal education to the community and why a liberal education forms the basis of what our students need to succeed in life, both in terms of careers and their place in a wider society. At this point, the Chancellor and I prepared to bring the Liberal Education Initiative before our students, faculty, and staff on a much broader basis. Just as we were preparing to do so, the Higher Learning Commission sent a site team to our campus as part of our 10-year reaccreditation process. While the Commission gave us unconditional reaccreditation for the maximum period allowed, it did suggest that we do more to reform our general education program and develop a university-wide assessment plan. Since a liberal education initiative speaks to both of these key issues, the Chancellor and I moved quickly to develop a charge for a campus-wide liberal education reform team. The charge went out in late May, and a 26-person team led by the Dean of LNS, a professor from the College of Business, and the Chancellor's Leadership Fellow was formed. One of the early tasks of the team has been to examine the AAC&U's essential learning outcomes to see if these may form a basis for moving the initiative forward. To help further this discussion, Deborah Humphreys from the AAC&U will be a keynote speaker at next week's Provost Summit on Teaching and Learning at our campus. We will also be sending campus leaders to St. Norbert College for the statewide conference on LEAP in early November. Finally, I would like to say a word concerning the need to distribute liberal education across all colleges and at all levels of the curriculum. As Chancellor Wells noted in the UW-Oshkosh magazine, The broad knowledge and skills provided by a liberal education also must be developed for all college students in their majors and not just in the courses that satisfy general education requirements. A liberal education introduces students to multiple perspectives and develops their independent critical judgment. It exposes them to a wide array of ideas and teaches them how to evaluate those ideas. The introduction to new perspectives often leads students to question pre-existing ideas and beliefs. This is precisely why it is an ideal education to prepare students to function in a diverse and rapidly changing work environment. And just in case some of you feel that liberal education has no place in the professional studies curricula, I can share with you language from accrediting bodies across all professional disciplines that speak to the importance of the skills and values developed through a liberal education. For the sake of brevity, I will quote from the Standards for Accreditation of Baccalaureate and Graduate Nursing Programs. And here it is, in case you can't hear me. Liberal education is not a separate or distinct segment of professional education, but an integrated educational experience recognized and valued as an ongoing, lifelong process. Courses in the arts, sciences, and humanities provide a forum for the study of values, ethical principles in the physical world, as well as opportunities to reflect and apply knowledge gained to professional practice. Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to Dean Christian now, who will talk about SAGLA and the work that it's done on behalf of LEAD.
Good afternoon. My aim here is to just very quickly outline some of the coordination and cooperation that's been happening among campuses in the UW system to advocate and advance liberal education within the state. And we see this as setting a system-wide context for the very important and essential campus-based work like you just heard about. This work is taking place primarily under the auspices of a campaign that began in 2004 entitled The Currency of the Liberal Arts and Sciences, Rethinking Liberal Education in Wisconsin. And the aim here is to refocus attention and interest on the value of liberal education in the 21st century. This work is undertaken by a group, in part by a group called the System Advisory Group on the Liberal Arts. It has this sort of dissonant-sounding acronym of SAGLA that we're not real happy with, but we're working on that. Some of our key activities have been to discuss and share useful models among campuses so that we're not all reinventing the wheel repeatedly, public advocacy for liberal education, a number of multi-campus and system-wide initiatives, and we have served as one of the primary contacts and points of collaboration with the AAC&U on its LEAP campaign. We're a fairly large group. Chancellor Erlenbach at UW Superior is an honorary member, and in addition, our membership includes 1 provost and vice chancellor, 11 letters and sciences or arts and sciences deans, including a couple UW college campus deans, 1 associate dean. We have 6 faculty, staff, department chairs, campus leaders who are members, along with 4 UW system staff members. And the group represents 16 campuses. In addition, Deborah Humphreys, who's the Vice President for Communication and Public Affairs at AAC&U, is a member, and our newest member is the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Humanities Council. Our group meets 3 times annually. We do additional work via phone, email, working groups and committees and so on, along with our day jobs. I want to just quickly outline some examples of some of the kinds of things that our group has been engaged in, and I'll first talk about some examples of sharing good practice models among campuses, again with the goal of not reinventing the wheel repeatedly. A number of campuses have followed the lead of UW Oshkosh in syllabus projects, showcasing and identifying syllabus language in courses that highlights for students and for faculty the values of liberal education. A number of our campuses have undertaken liberal education discussions among faculty to develop a common and shared understanding of the values of liberal education. We've undertaken a number of public advocacy efforts for liberal education, Some of our campuses have developed campus community dialogues about liberal education. We've done some public radio programming, both in single spots as well as a new series at UW-Stevens Point that's a monthly series talking about the values of liberal education. We've written some editorial and opinion pieces on liberal education. And we've developed and shared presentations for alumni and other off-campus groups. These presentations commonly capitalize on some of the information that the AAC&U has developed through its LEAP campaign. One of the common themes that some of us try to develop in these presentations is to help people understand the general convergence of views about the value of liberal education among national policy leaders, business leaders, and the academy, and the degree to which this consensus view may differ from common views held by many students, many parents, and many members of the public. We've undertaken some coordinated system-wide efforts, even though it's not strictly a SAGLA effort. Our group has supported the upcoming November 2007 Liberal Education Conference at St. Norbert's College. This is a cooperative effort of UW System, the Technical College System, YCU, and the AAC&U. Participants in this conference will focus primarily on faculty and instructional staff who will be taking part as campus teams. We're planning another liberal education conference for fall of 2008. This one will focus on using liberal education as a theme for defragmenting, or perhaps to state it more positively, for increasing the cohesion in the educational programs at our universities. And we hope to involve instructional, administrative, support personnel from all campuses, as well as business, media, other leaders in the community. One of our really successful and rewarding coordinated system-wide efforts has been an annual liberal arts essay scholarship competition. The aim of this program has been to promote understanding of the value and purpose of liberal education among students on campuses within the UW system. The system competition awards 3 $2,000 scholarships, which are based on the quality of essays that students submit. There's a separate competition for the doctoral and comprehensive campuses and for the 2-year campuses. And on some campuses, scholarships for nominees have been made available to encourage participation at the campus level. It looks like I'm being hurried along here. That's fine. Each year, the essays respond to a particular theme. The theme for the coming year is to imagine yourself as a graduating senior with a younger sibling who will be starting college next year. What advice would you offer to this brother or sister who's setting off on the path of a liberal education? What experiences should your sibling anticipate or seek out that might afford a richer comprehension of liberal education's ideals? The essay theme in 2007 was to choose a contemporary issue or problem that you consider significant and write an essay demonstrating the ways in which your liberal education helps to understand, contextualize, and address the issue or problem. I think those of us who have read these essays have been just really pleased and rewarded at what we learn about our students' liberal education from these processes. We find that the best of these essays are deeply personal. Students are thoughtful and insightful about relating their formal education to bigger issues in their lives, and as I'll show you here shortly, the essays are just very eloquently written. Here's one from the first year of the competition by a student at UW-Sheboygan whose essay was entitled Significant and Applicable Knowledge, Liberal Arts in the 21st Century. And this student wrote, last year at this time I was wandering the streets of Japan. With my digital camera and a sense of adventure, I explored the shrines and temples. She wrote then about moving into the industrial part of the city. Gradually the landscape changed as she moved into other parts of the city. It seemed that I had just stumbled into a whole different dimension. I realized that there was an equilibrium between the sacred shrines and the surrounding community. My understanding of the world and how it worked changed in that moment. I feel that the liberal arts is much like my neighborhood in Japan, a mixture of elements coming together to serve a purpose. This is one of the award-winning essays from last year by Brian Reisinger, who's a student at UW-Eau Claire. His essay was entitled My Liberal Education, Repairing the Foundations of Journalism. And Brian wrote, I remember when the news broke in the fall of 2005 that UW-Eau Claire had enforced a policy prohibiting senior R.A. Lance Steiger from holding Bible studies in his room or residence hall. I was news editor for The Spectator at the time. The Associated Press had picked up on the controversy before us, leaving us scrambling to catch up on our own turf. This could be big, I said in one of the all-time great understatements of my career. Suddenly, Brian wrote, I was directing and contributing to coverage that had some serious implications. And he went on then to write very thoughtfully about the difference between the ideal journalism of the classroom and the journalism of practice and the conditions on which those differences hinged. A final outcome of our system-wide effort is one that I want to comment on. It's very important, and it's the degree to which we draw motivation and support and inspiration from each other. The best way that I can illustrate this is with a conversation I had with a senior professor on my campus who told me how gratifying it was after years and years of feeling like she was a lone voice in the wilderness valuing liberal education to know that she was now working as part of an initiative that was reflected in college and campus plans that supported and were supported by a system-wide initiative that in turn was part and parcel of a national initiative via the AAC&U LEAP campaign. So this has been a very important cultural aspect on our campuses. I just want to close by pointing out to you that we have a System Advisory Group website. It's accessible on the UW System home site. Probably the easiest way to get to it is looking up SAGLA on the A to Z index. Thank you.
And now we would be happy to answer questions that you might have, but we also thought that the three of us being products of liberal education and involved in teaching in liberal education and our students, that we would give you some questions that we would hope you would engage in confronting and helping us inform our thinking about it. Because, so here they are. What do you think are the key components of an undergraduate education, and have we captured them here? How do we articulate and advance the importance of liberal education for Wisconsin's future? And as a board of trustees, what might you do to help us move this agenda forward?
Why don't you call on people, Rebecca?
Okay. Judy.
Well, Rebecca already knows that this is a hot topic for me, and I probably should start by saying my major at the UW-Madison was history, and I'm very proud of that and put a high value upon that. And I just want to say a couple of things that fit into these questions. One is that it's unthinkable to me that we would not continue to and emphasize and do this so in some new ways, that a liberal education is a part of any university education, that there is no way around that, and that I think that, and I would agree with some of the comments that were implicit here, that is not always indicated in the way we talk about higher education. And I just feel extremely strongly about that, and am very excited about this effort. And one concept that is important about the importance of a liberal education that I don't think is fully captured here, and that usually is not, and I don't know how to fully say this, but one of the reasons it's important is for an educated person is the knowledge and appreciation of all aspects of life itself, both as an individual and as a part of a community. So it's not just skills, and it's not just being able to be a critical thinker, all of which I believe, but I think it has a much deeper meaning or broader perhaps. And finally, one practical suggestion that I don't know, although I don't know what the answer is, I think we should ditch the term general education. If there's anything that's deadening, it's that kind of a categorization, because those courses should not be looked upon as what I think that sounds like.
thought it was going to be hard to figure out an alternative to SAGLA, Regent. Now we've got to redo general education.
Other thoughts? Okay, well, yes, Kevin.
I've got a few. You know, one of the things I've observed over the course of my career in the academy is the pressure increasing. I think it's been a trend on faculty over my time in this profession to feel like they work not just in a discipline or with a discipline, but for a discipline. That is and they do all that, but the pressure to get so sunken into one's specialty that one can easily lose the connections. That's very often are the things that energize young people to want to become faculty members in the first place. I think one of the real beauties of this, and this kind of builds on what Don was saying, is that through the good work that Rebecca and Don Lane and Rebecca Karoff is sitting back here in the lilac outfit, so you know who she is, who's done great work on this. One of the real benefits of the work they've done is that we've started to reverse some of that trend. And I think we've got some faculty, old and young, re-energized now, thinking, what I do in my discipline is really important, and I certainly want to be a scholar and researcher and publisher in my area. But I've also got an obligation to a wider set of connections across human understanding that I want to live with and I want to impart to my students in their education. So that's been just a great piece of this work. I was also thinking, as they were talking about the what I'll describe as the incandescent statement that the University of Wisconsin Board of Regents made in 1894, the one that's on the plaque at Bascom Hall. It says, you know, whatever may be the limitations which trammel inquiry elsewhere, we believe that the great State University of Wisconsin should ever encourage that continual and fearless sifting and winnowing by which alone the truth can be found. I think many of us are so familiar with that thought that we sometimes kind of forget that we don't work hard enough, don't think enough about how to encourage our students to do that sifting and winnowing. And maybe one way to do that is to teach them a bit about the difference between a correct statement and a profound truth. The 20th century Danish physicist, great scientist Niels Bohr, said about that, the opposite of a correct statement is an incorrect statement. The opposite of a profound truth is another profound truth. I think we want our students to get their hands dirty sifting and winnowing their way through that kind of thinking in every UW degree program, in every UW course, and in every UW learning experience. And for me, in short, that's what this LEAP campaign is about, and I'm very proud of the work my colleagues have done in it and the fact that we've been leaders in it and will continue to be so.
Mike.
You did such a fine job in explaining it. I'm sitting here wondering, what would be a counterpoint? Why? Because there's organization behind this, organizations behind this. It seems like it's the right thing to do. What would, I mean, there's a lot of structure behind all of this. What would be a counterpoint? Who would be against it?
Well, I think that there are several points that we hear and encounter as we move this agenda. One of them is that many of our students come to college preparing for that job. You know, what they're going to get where they're going to be, how they're going to support themselves and their families when they move out of college. And they're very, very focused. And frankly, as are some of their parents on, you know, well, you don't want to, you know, what is it you're going to do? You need to major in business. You need to get out there and get that nursing degree so that you will have a job. And the value of the opening of the mind is not always as clear as that pressure coming in. So I think that we need to make that clear to our students about it being what the value of this. That's one. And I'm going to let Lane and maybe Don, who are more eloquent than I on this topic, talk about that too. But let me give you another one. Another one is, why are we going to educate more liberals? Is that what we're doing here? Are we educating liberals? I'm serious. The term liberal education get us in trouble. Well, I thought I'd just, it's the elephant sitting in the room. I thought I'd just get it out there. We have in this effort and in AAC&U as they began this project, spent a lot of time talking about whether or not we should drop the term liberal education, come up with another way to describe this. But there is such a long history and tradition behind it that I think there was an issue about doing that. Some of us like to use the term, and Lane used it when I think he was quoting Rick Wells, a liberating education. When that River Falls faculty member that we heard from earlier this morning talked about opening doors for her students and showing them doors that they didn't even know existed. That's what this is about to me. But I think we need to do a better job in articulating that for people who are not part of higher education so they understand the full scope of what it's about. But I'll let Lane add to this.
You've been called the elephant in the room now as well. It's a good day for you. I would just like to say that we spent...
That was a political...
We spent the last few years dealing with difficult budgets and talking about opening access and engagement and doing more with the communities. And there's a feeling along the way that maybe we lost track of what really is the heart of what we do. And that's dealing with students and teaching them to think critically. And this idea of liberal education is not exactly the same that the liberal arts was 100 years ago. It really relies more on engagement, and that's what I've liked most of all about the AAC&U's interpretation of a liberal education. It allows us to bring together a lot of the things that we are, especially at the comprehensive institutions these days, and put them into play on our campuses and bring that out to the community. And Regent Crane, you talked about taking some of this out into the community and bringing some of the community into what we do on campus, not just in the classroom as well. And we work very hard at that, and just at our campus, we're now in the midst of our annual Shakespeare on the Fox event, in which we bring Shakespeare to the community all up and down the valley, and this is one of the things that grew out of our initiative. So it was a feeling by a number of people, especially among the provosts, that it was time to think back to what our core is, to talk about quality again, and talk about why we're in this profession, and make sure as we're doing all these other great things around these tables here that we remember who we are and how we got here and what we need to do to move on into the future to train our students to fulfill the roles they need to fulfill.
So it would make business folk less hard-headed?
I don't know where you got that.
Sure.
One additional response I think that's worth noting is that a lot of the value of this campaign is internal communication. President Riley mentioned the disciplinary focus of many faculty, and that's essential, but it's not enough. And it's also important in terms of communicating with students. And I heard the story when I first came to Wisconsin about a student on one of the other UW campuses who had been to a job fair, and she came into the dean's office in tears. She went into the dean's office, and it could be any major but history. She said, I'm a history major, and I went to all these tables and I told people I was a history major, and they laughed at me. Does this mean I'm not going to get a job? And the dean worked with her to think about how she could cast herself as more than history major. So they talked about the research experiences she had gained, her writing capabilities, the insights that she had gained in working with groups on research projects. So that struck me as being a shame that a student could reach the point of being a senior in a liberal arts institution and not have a better idea of what it was she had learned in the process. So much of our value, I think, is internal communication as well.
Let me just add one more thing. Back, I don't know, I think sometime at the beginning of the summer, Regent Bradley said to me, you know, once we have the growth agenda, I want to move beyond that in terms of what we're talking about with the Regents. And he challenged me to bring to you issues that would engage you in thinking about teaching our students and the good work that we're doing and the challenges that we're facing on our campus in moving that agenda forward. And I was really captured by both his interest and his optimism and confidence. And so we scheduled this for October, thinking, of course, by now we would be ready to move beyond talking about the budget, and we would have the growth agenda, and we would be able to focus on the real work that we're doing. I was sitting over there and then out in the hall talking to my colleagues about where we're going to have to postpone this to a future meeting. So I really appreciate you finishing your resolution in time and giving us your attention while lunch is waiting to consider what we can see as a very important topic, and we look forward to being back on other issues as we move through this year. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to the other presenters. This, in many ways, really is what we're all about as an educational system beyond the budget. But speaking of the budget, President Riley would like a couple of closing comments before lunch.
Thank you. This will be quick. You know, when you're the president of the University of Wisconsin, you're always very proud to be the president of the University of Wisconsin. There's some days when you're even prouder to be the president of the University of Wisconsin. So I wanted to say to this board publicly, on behalf of all my colleagues in the system and our students and their families, thank you for the intensity with which you're approaching the message you want to send across the state about where we are with our budget, where we are with the growth agenda, where we are with cost to continue, and how important the institutions that you steward are to the future of our students and families. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Kevin. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.